Evaluation planning is vital for success of an evaluation. And so we're going to go through each of the different components of an evaluation plan one by one. And so we're going to start with the introduction. So the introduction just kind of outlines exactly what it is that you're going to be doing for the evaluation. It includes the plan. The overall plan has to have background, purposes, limitations, stakeholders, decisions, questions, methods, sample, instruments, procedures, logistics, and timeline for the evaluation. So these are the components of an evaluation plan, and so you kind of outline that here in the introduction. This kind of gives you an outline who all is involved, what it is that you're doing the evaluation on, and what are the components of the evaluation. So the second element of it is the background, and the background basically situates the project. So if your project has a history, you want to provide that history. You know, if it's a modification to a previous course, then you would say that. If it's a repackaging of a course, you want to say that. If it's evolving from one technology to another, you want to give all the background information on what the project that you're evaluating is, so people who are engaged in it can understand it. Section thoroughly describes the purposes of the evaluation. A single plan can address a variety of purposes. Purpose is really important to the overall goal of the of your evaluations. You want to start with a purpose. What is the purpose of the evaluation? What is it that you're trying to accomplish with the evaluation? Again, this is a sample from the Reeves et al. Book on the overall purpose, and so it has an overall stated purpose that they're really focused on the formative evaluation of the product. The product is a SAE learning system, and so it has this overall goal of doing formative evaluation, but then has these sub purposes about exact improvements that are going to be made in the evaluation. The next element of your project plan is to identify the stakeholders, and again, there are clients, there are primary stakeholders, secondary stakeholders. And the clients can be ambiguous. The clients could be, if you're working for a large firm, let's say Home Depot, well, Home Depot has thousands of employees. What part of Home Depot are your clients? And so it might be the training manager, it might be the instructional designers, but who are the specific clients for your project? The primary stakeholders tend to be the people being the primary audience, and the secondary stakeholders are people that are more peripheral but involved in that audience. So in the example from the Reeves et al. Book, the clients are the design team. The primary stakeholders include other consultants and the development effort and middle school science education community. And the secondary stakeholders of the plan, well, no, the large middle school science community would also be, so the people involved, but then there's the secondary, which is the actual kids who will be learning from it. The next thing to consider, the next thing to include in your project plan, and again, you think about the project plan, it needs to be sort of detailed. You need to have a great amount of detail, but you also need to be flexible in that. But a great place to start, and you don't really need to start with the purpose, you could start with the decisions. And so once you figured out who the stakeholders are, you can figure out what decisions do those stakeholders want to make. What's the goal of the evaluation? What decisions are they going to make based on the evaluation? So again, most of these decisions that are here are decisions related to improving the SAE product. This is again the example from the Reeves et al. Book on e-learning evaluation, and so this is what they anticipate as decisions that are going to be made and improvements that are going to be made to the educational product as you go about doing it. So decisions is a great place to begin. Once you have the decisions that are going to be made, you then have to derive questions. because again, with evaluation data, you're basically answering questions, but you want to ask the right questions so that you get the right data, so that you can then have the most informed decision that you can have. So you don't come up with the questions independent of the decision making. You really need to know what decisions are going to be made, then figure out what are the key questions that you need to get answered in order to give the decision makers the data they need to make those decisions. So again, here's an example set of questions from the Reeves et al. Book. What are the technical requirements of the SAE e-learning program? What are learner reactions? What are teacher reactions? What are expert reactions? And again, these all tie back into the stakeholders that are involved in the evaluation. Once you have questions, then you have to figure out what methods are you going to employ to figure out answers to those questions. So again, each one of these things is leading to the next thing, and so you've got good questions. Now you got to figure out what are the good methods that you can employ to get answers to those questions. What data are you going to collect? How are you going to collect that data in order to answer those questions? Again, taking from the Reeves book, they list a variety of strategies that they're going to use, like anecdotal records, user questionnaires, user interviews, user focus groups, online data collection, expert review. These are all really good, but it's not an extensive list of what's available. Again, for some of you, document analysis might be the appropriate thing. So if it's a project in the early stages of design and development, you might be looking at standards. You might be looking at existing courseware. You might be looking at stuff that's available online. You may be researching and reviewing documents rather than collecting data from individuals. Or you may be doing both. Again, a good strategy for evaluation is to employ multiple methods. Now, this is probably, I think, one of the most important tables to create in your evaluation plan. And that is to take your questions and put it across the top of the table, and then your methods along the y-axis of your table, and then to put a check mark where the data that you're going to collect from that specific method, what question is it going to answer? So, and you want to have a lot of X's, but let's just take a look at one of these. If you look at question D, what are expert reactions, and then you go on to methods, there's the expert reviews. So you're going to ask experts to review the software. Well, there's only one X in that particular column, and so because that's the only data source that's, again, expert. You want expert reactions, you got to have expert reviews, and so there's only one data collection method for that particular strategy. It's nice to have multiples, because then you can do this thing called triangulation, so that you get one result from the anecdotal records. Say in the question B, you get one result from the anecdotal records, you get a different result from the learner questionnaires, and so you can try to make sense of why that different result is there. Or if you get confirming results from all of those, so again, in what are learner reactions, there's 5 X's there. If you get sort of confirmatory results from each of those different data sources, that strengthens the power of the data that you have to make better decisions. Then the next section is, who are your participants? And so, and again, participants could be learners from the learner population, but it also could be personnel who are involved. And so, in looking at the example from the Reeves book, they have a panel of content and instructional experts from the middle school science education community. They have 10 teachers, 90 students, and then they have 8 representatives from the sales and marketing department. So these are the people that they're collecting data from, because these are the people that are going to be able to answer the questions that are going to inform the decisions. So it's just so we're gone from decisions to questions to methods to now figuring out who are the participants that we're going to collect data from. It could also be in a document analysis, what documents you're going to review. So then you have to figure out what are your instruments. And so instruments could be surveys. It could be, if you're going to do interviews, you do interview guides, whatever instruments that you're going to use. Now, one of the things that we ask people to consider in instrumentation is reliability and validity. And so if you read the book, reliability is the example they used is that if I step on my scale 10 times, it gives me the same weight all 10 times, that it says what my weight is. That's what reliability is. Every time I measure it, I get the same result. Validity is if I step on the weight and I get 10 readings every time, and every time it's 5 pounds more than I actually weigh, well, then that's not a valid measure because it's not measuring to a specific standard. And so what you're going to do is you're going to take that scale and measure it against another scale that you know is accurately measuring weight, and that will then validate that instrument. So you want to engage in reliability and validity. The best strategy for this is to use existing tests that already have reliability and validity data. If you don't, then you're going to have some issues in creating your instruments. If you create your instruments, you have to go through some sort of reliability and validity checking. So, and again, from the book, here are the instruments, and the instruments you don't actually get to see in the book, but in your actual report, they absolutely should be there. Every question, exactly how it was asked, every interview guide, the things that you were asking in the interviews, all of that should be in the appendix so that people who are making these decisions based on the data can actually see the instruments that were used to collect that data. And all of it should be documented in your plan. Finally, you go into limitations, and in limitations, you want to point out that you didn't have time to do reliability and validity. You might have collected data from one source that's biased in some fashion. So the people who you might interview the instructional designers who are sort of committed to this project, and they think it's the best thing since sliced bread. And you might interview people who are actually learning it, and they don't think it's so good. So why did you get that discrepant data? Well, the people who you interviewed who said it was good, well, they have a stake in this project, and so maybe their opinion is biased. So you got to look for bias. You got to look for other limitations. Might be that it is beyond the scope of what data you collected. So all you're going to be looking at is the things that are under your purposes to answer those decisions, and other results that are beyond that might not be found because you're not looking for it. And again, here's the sample limitations from the Reeves book. And logistics are really key. And so in logistics, you're basically saying who's going to do what's it going to be. Unfortunately, the example they give in the book, they kind of outline it, but what they didn't do is they didn't provide a timeline. And I think a graphical representation of a timeline is key for understanding logistics, so that you know who's doing what, when, and that there's enough time to do those things. So again, here's the sample from the book. Oh, sorry. Logistics and timeline are two different things. Timeline. Consider using a graphical representation of your timeline. And again, here's the book's example, and it has dates in there, but it would be better to have that in a graphical form. The budget is really, well, for this class, your budget is going to be zero because you're not going to have any money to do this. But it's good to kind of figure that out. And so I look at the sample budget that they provide, and there's interesting information here, like the billing rate's $1,200 a day for evaluationPlanning.com consultants. If I recall correctly, there were 2 consultants, so that basically means that each consultant's earning $600 a day, which is slightly less than $100 an hour. That's not an unheard of amount of money to make. Again, that's loaded hours. You've got to pay extra employer share of Social Security out of that. You got to pay for benefits out of that. You got to pay for facilities out of that. And so it's not that the evaluators are making $90 that they put in their pocket. It's loaded amounts. Be realistic with these numbers, and I encourage you to do this just as an exercise and make up your numbers as you see fit. But travel could be really important, and again, they budgeted $750 a trip. I can't think of a trip I've taken where it only cost me $750. It's travel can be very expensive, so try to come up with a realistic budget for what you're able to accomplish. And so I'll leave it with this table, which again is in the book. This is everything in the evaluation plan, highlighted in the 6 facets of evaluation recording that I made before was this plan, this evaluation plan. And it really does speak volumes that the key elements of this are to figure out what decisions are to be made and then derive questions from those decisions, and from those questions come up with the methods that are going to provide you with those answers. That's sort of the key elements of this evaluation plan, and it really is the focus of your work. Everything else simply builds out from that. And so those are the 3 core things that you have to do for an evaluation plan. Okay? So remember, you're going to have to come up with your plan. The plan counts 20 points towards your final grade, and that's coming up pretty soon. So you pay close attention to this and begin to contact your clients and start to figure out what are those decisions. Start to get the answers to your evaluation planning decisions, which are what are the decisions that are to be made, what questions, and what methods you might employ. Okay, thank you.